Ladies and gentlemen, there will come a time in your life when you must choose peace or people. And if you don't choose peace, people will destroy you in silence. You don't have to beg for clarity when someone shows you their chaos. Let me ask you, how many dreams have died because you allowed someone toxic to live rent-free in your mind? How many mornings have you awakened exhausted, not because of what you're doing, but because of who you're dealing with? Toxic people are not just rude or unpleasant. They are assignments sent to deter you from your divine destiny. If you don't learn how to deal with them the smart way, you'll spend years fighting battles that were never yours to fight. This message is for every soul who is tired of being drained. If you want wisdom, not revenge, healing, not bitterness, then stay with me, because what you're about to hear will not only protect your peace, it will realign your life. The smartest way to deal with toxic people isn't confrontation, it's consecration. You must learn to raise your standard without lowering your love. That means setting boundaries that are not built on hatred, but built on holiness. When you stop giving access to those who refuse to honor your value, your life will shift. Toxic people feed off reaction. So the moment you stop explaining yourself, stop defending yourself, stop proving yourself, you disarm their power over you. The scripture says, "Be still and know," not be loud and defend. The stillness of your spirit is a sign of spiritual maturity. When you walk in divine wisdom, you learn to identify who is an assignment from heaven and who is a distraction from hell. And once you know, act wisely. Don't react emotionally. Toxic people thrive in drama, but you are not called to be a character in their chaos. You are called to rise, to shine, to be light in dark places, but not to lose your light trying to fix someone else's broken lamp. Sometimes the smartest way is the silent way. You can love them, but from a distance. You can forgive them without returning. You can pray for them without participating in their patterns. Toxic people are distractions, not your destiny. That statement alone carries enough truth to change the course of your life. When you begin to see toxic individuals for what they truly are, spiritual detours rather than divine appointments, you will finally step into the clarity and peace you've been craving. There are people in your life right now who are not there to help you grow, heal, or walk in purpose. They are there to confuse, to drain, and to derail. Not because they are stronger than your calling, but because your focus has been compromised. Toxic people know how to occupy space without adding value. They smile in your face while planting doubt in your spirit. And if you're not careful, their words will become louder than your own thoughts, their opinions heavier than your own vision, and their presence more distracting than their absence ever was. Every time you try to prove your worth to someone who cannot see it, you are slowing down your own progress. Destiny doesn't wait for those who are busy explaining themselves. It moves forward with those who are willing to release what doesn't serve them. God never intended for you to carry burdens disguised as relationships. There is no medal for enduring abuse, no blessing for tolerating manipulation. And yet, many people confuse loyalty with bondage. They stay attached to the very people God is trying to remove. Toxic people are not just bad company. They are spiritual noise. They cloud your judgment. They interrupt your peace. They stir confusion in places that should be still. They use charm to gain access and guilt to keep it. And if you don't discern it early, you will think their presence is a blessing when it is in fact a trap. The enemy rarely shows up looking like a problem. He shows up looking like a solution. And that's why so many fall into emotional captivity. They confuse attention with affection and chaos with chemistry. The truth is, your energy is sacred, your peace is holy, and anything that disrupts it should not have a permanent place in your life. You were not created to constantly fix, rescue, or convince others to treat you right. You were created to live in the fullness of who you are, without apology. But toxic people want you small so they feel big. They want you uncertain so they can control. They want you tired so you won't walk away. And so they use their words as weapons, their silence as punishment, and their inconsistency as confusion. But you must remember, your purpose is greater than your pain. Your calling is greater than their chaos. And your future is greater than your past encounters. What lies ahead cannot be reached if you're chained to what drains. Every moment you spend explaining yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you is a moment wasted. You owe no one an explanation for protecting your peace. You owe no one your presence if it cost you your sanity. God does not need you to suffer to prove your love. He needs you to separate so you can hear his voice. Toxic people are distractions. They pull you out of alignment. They make you question what you once knew for sure. They twist your words, mock your dreams, and celebrate your setbacks. But once you realize that they are not part of your assignment, you'll stop making space for their nonsense. You don't need closure, you need clarity. And the clearest truth you must embrace is this: not everyone deserves access to you. Not everyone qualifies for your time. And not everyone who enters your life is meant to stay. Some people are just lessons, hard ones. They teach you what love is not. They teach you what peace looks like by stealing it. But after the lesson is learned, don't repeat the class. Start today by making a decision. I will no longer sacrifice my mental and emotional health for relationships that bring me pain. I will no longer entertain people who are committed to confusion. I will guard my heart, protect my mind, and honor my calling, because my destiny is too important, my peace is too precious, and my purpose is too sacred to be wasted on the toxic. The smartest thing you can do with toxic people is not fight, not argue, not explain. It's to understand they are distractions, not your destiny. Let them go so you can grow. Let them be so you can become. Let them walk so you can finally run toward the life you were always meant to live. You don't fight toxicity with fire, you conquer it with spiritual authority. There is a power within you that no insult, manipulation, or chaotic person can touch. And yet too many people lower themselves to match the chaos they were never meant to entertain. When someone offends you, belittles you, or constantly stirs conflict, your first reaction may be to respond with anger, clap back with words, or try to prove your strength through confrontation. But that's not strength. It's distraction in disguise. Toxic people thrive on reaction. They want you to mirror their energy so they can justify their behavior. They pull you into their emotional storm, hoping you lose your peace in the process. But when you operate from a place of spiritual authority, you understand that silence is often louder than words. You understand that walking away is not weakness, it's wisdom. You understand that not every battle is yours to fight. Some battles are set up to drain you, not grow you. Spiritual authority is not about being louder than the problem. It's about standing so firm in your peace that the problem can't find a way in. It's about knowing who you are so deeply that no one's opinion, mood, or projection can move you. When you truly know your value, you don't beg for respect. You embody it. You don't demand attention, you command presence. And you certainly don't argue with people who are determined to misunderstand you. You see, the problem with fighting fire with fire is that everything burns, including you. You were not created to live in a constant state of stress, frustration, or defense. That is not divine living. That is emotional slavery. And toxic people will keep you there as long as you let them. They'll bait you with drama, test you with manipulation, and watch as you unravel piece by piece. But when you rise in spiritual awareness, you begin to see the pattern. You begin to understand that some attacks aren't personal. They're spiritual. Some conflicts aren't about what was said. They're about what is unseen. That's why you must choose elevation over reaction. Rise above the noise. Rise above the temptation to respond to every insult. Rise above the urge to match the energy of someone who thrives in dysfunction. Because every time you choose peace over pride, heaven celebrates. Every time you refuse to retaliate, you step into higher authority. And every time you say no to unnecessary conflict, you say yes to your purpose. The most powerful people are not those who fight every battle. They're the ones who know which ones are even worth their time. Toxic people are not challenges to defeat. They are signs to redirect your energy. They are reminders that discernment is necessary. Not everyone who talks to you is worthy of a response. Not everyone who offends you is worth your emotional energy. When you are led by spirit and not by ego, you stop showing up for wars that don't deserve your presence. Walking in spiritual authority means you let God fight the battles you used to fight with your tongue. It means you protect your energy like a precious treasure, because you understand it's not infinite. You stop rehearsing the offense. You stop retaliating. You don't waste your nights reliving someone's disrespect. You don't waste your prayers trying to fix someone else. You simply release it and trust that divine justice handles what you no longer carry. It also means you speak differently. You carry yourself differently. When people try to provoke you, they find nothing to grasp because you are rooted in something deeper than emotion. You are rooted in purpose. You don't need to convince people of who you are because your peace proves it. Your growth proves it. When you stop fighting with fire and start walking with spiritual fire, toxic people lose all power over you. Their words fall flat. Their games fall apart, and their presence becomes irrelevant. Because you are no longer trying to survive in their chaos. You are now thriving in your calling. You cannot elevate and entertain dysfunction at the same time. Choose wisely. Choose peace. Choose your higher self. Choose to conquer without conflict, to rise without retaliation, and to win without war. That is the smartest way to deal with toxicity. Not through more fire, but through unshakable spiritual authority. Let your peace speak louder than your pain. Let your wisdom walk ahead of your words, and let your calling drown out their chaos. That's where your real power lies. Discernment is your shield when navigating the territory of toxic people. Without it, you will invite confusion into your life and call it connection. You will welcome manipulation and call it love. You will accept mistreatment and call it grace. But when you walk in discernment, your eyes open, your spirit sharpens, and you begin to see people not just for who they pretend to be, but for what they carry into your atmosphere. Not every smile is sincere, not every compliment is pure, and not every relationship is divine. Some are sent to distract, delay, or detour you from your assignment, but if your heart is open without wisdom, you will make room for snakes in your garden, and then wonder why your peace is poisoned. Discernment is not suspicion. It is not judgment, it is spiritual clarity. It is the ability to sense what words cannot say, to see beyond the surface, and to recognize when someone is not aligned with your purpose. Many people suffer longer than they need to because they ignore the signs. They feel the tension. They sense the drain, but they dismiss it, hoping that love, time, or patience will change the person. The truth is, discernment will often show you who someone is before they speak a word. It will whisper to your spirit in moments when your emotions are too loud. It will give you that unease, that lack of peace, that feeling that something isn't quite right, even when everything looks perfect. That's not paranoia, that's protection. To walk in discernment, you must stop idolizing potential. Toxic people often wear masks of potential. They speak well, they know the right words. They may even offer you what feels like emotional security in the beginning. But discernment sees beyond the charisma and charm. It sees the fruit, because where there is no fruit, there is no life. Where there is constant drama, manipulation, dishonor, or instability, you are not witnessing growth, you are witnessing decay. God did not give you discernment to ignore it. He gave it so you could navigate life without being misled by appearances. You cannot afford to let your kindness become a doorway for the enemy. You cannot afford to hand your heart to people who don't even know how to guard their own. Every toxic relationship that remains in your life despite your better judgment is a choice to tolerate what heaven has already asked you to release. You must also understand that discernment is sharpened in stillness. You cannot hear clearly if your life is always noisy. That's why toxic people are so dangerous. They create constant noise. They fill your time with their problems. They consume your mental space with their drama. They blur your spiritual focus. But when you step away, when you pray, reflect, and return to stillness, your spirit begins to speak again. You begin to remember who you are, what you deserve, and what you are no longer willing to tolerate. And discernment doesn't always tell you what you want to hear. Sometimes it reveals that the person you love is not capable of loving you back in a healthy way. Sometimes it shows you that the friend you trust is only loyal when things are convenient. Sometimes it reveals that a relationship you've invested in is built more on emotional dependency than mutual respect. But ignoring these truths doesn't protect your heart. It prolongs your healing. Toxic people thrive where discernment is ignored. They stay in your life as long as you keep giving them the benefit of the doubt while ignoring the burden of their presence. They manipulate your empathy. They twist your forgiveness, and they make you question your worth. But once discernment is activated and honored, you begin to make different decisions. You stop explaining yourself. You stop second-guessing what your spirit already knows. You trust the red flags instead of painting them white. Discernment gives you the courage to walk away not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. It teaches you that peace is more valuable than proximity, that just because someone has history with you doesn't mean they belong in your destiny. That growth often requires separation, and sometimes the most loving thing you can do is release someone who is not capable of walking the path you're called to. So ask for discernment daily. Guard it like treasure. Follow it even when it's uncomfortable, because when you are led by discernment, you stop settling for toxicity disguised as love. You stop compromising with confusion, and you start aligning with truth. That's when healing begins. That's when purpose accelerates. And that's when your life begins to reflect the peace and clarity it was always meant to carry. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They are gates to protect what's sacred within. They are not built out of hate, but out of love. Love for your peace, your purpose, and your personal growth. The smartest way to deal with toxic people is not to fight them, fix them, or even try to make them understand you. The smartest way is to build clear, unshakable boundaries that keep your heart guarded and your life focused. Toxic people test limits. That's their nature. They push, they prod, they guilt, and they manipulate. And if you don't have strong boundaries, they will slowly move into spaces they were never meant to enter. They'll take advantage of your kindness and call it entitlement. They'll twist your compassion into obligation, and before you know it, you're drained, confused, and disconnected from your own identity because someone else has taken up space in your life they had no right to occupy. But when you know who you are and what you stand for, you begin to draw lines that protect your inner world. You stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop apologizing for choosing your peace. You stop overextending yourself just to keep someone else comfortable while you suffer in silence. Boundaries are not cruel. They are necessary. They don't make you selfish. They make you wise. Without boundaries, love becomes bondage. Generosity becomes exhaustion. Forgiveness becomes enabling. You are not called to be everything to everyone. You are not assigned to carry the weight of someone else's dysfunction. Toxic people often use guilt as a tool. They'll say you're being too harsh, too distant, or unloving. But the truth is, when someone benefits from your lack of boundaries, your growth will always feel like a betrayal to them. And that's okay. You were never meant to remain small so others could stay comfortable in their chaos. Setting boundaries is not about cutting people off in anger. It's about choosing clarity over confusion. It's about making decisions that align with your peace, even when others don't understand. It's about saying, this is what I can give and this is what I cannot, without shame or fear. And if someone walks away because you won't sacrifice your well-being to please them, let them walk. The right people in your life will respect your limits. They won't try to control your access to peace. They won't make you feel bad for taking care of yourself. You must also understand that boundaries are not one-time conversations. They are ongoing commitments. Toxic people will test them again and again. They'll try to re-enter through guilt, nostalgia, or emotional manipulation. But each time you reinforce your boundary, you strengthen your identity. You remind yourself that you are not a dumping ground for someone else's issues. You are not responsible for healing a person who refuses to heal themselves. You are not a savior. You are a soul, and you deserve peace. One of the hardest parts about building boundaries is dealing with the emotions that come with them. Sometimes you'll feel guilty, sometimes you'll feel selfish, but those feelings don't mean your boundaries are wrong. They mean you're healing. You're retraining yourself to value your needs. You're learning that saying no is not rejection, it's protection. You're growing into the version of you that no longer tolerates what once felt normal. And remember, boundaries aren't just about who you keep out. They're also about what you allow in. When you create space by removing toxic energy, you make room for healthy, loving, and empowering relationships. You begin to attract people who honor your time, who respect your soul, and who walk in mutual love and understanding. But that won't happen if your life is still crowded with chaos. Peace needs space to breathe. You don't owe anyone access to your life just because they've been in it for a long time. Loyalty should not come at the cost of your well-being. Family, friends, co-workers. No title justifies abuse. No relationship should cost you your self-respect. You are allowed to step back. You are allowed to say, this no longer serves me. You are allowed to protect your mental, emotional, and spiritual health, no matter how others feel about it. To stand firm in your boundaries. Speak them with love, but hold them with strength. You are not unkind for choosing peace. You are not cold for choosing clarity. You are not wrong for protecting what God has entrusted to you, your spirit, your purpose, your energy. That's not selfish. That's stewardship. Toxic people only have power where boundaries are absent. When you reclaim your space, they lose control. When you honor your needs, they lose access. And when you choose yourself, you begin to live in the fullness of peace that was always meant to be yours. Boundaries are not the end of love. They are the beginning of it. Love for yourself, love for your future, and love for the life you were created to live. Forgiveness is one of the most powerful decisions you will ever make. Not because it changes the other person, but because it frees you from the prison they built around your heart. When dealing with toxic people, forgiveness is not permission for them to stay. It's not an invitation to return. It is a release, a sacred act of letting go so you can reclaim the joy, clarity, and peace that belong to you. Holding on to bitterness, resentment, or anger only prolongs your suffering. Forgiveness breaks those chains and reminds you that you are no longer a victim of someone else's dysfunction. There is a common misconception that forgiveness means reconciliation. It does not. You can forgive someone completely and still never speak to them again. You can release the burden of their betrayal without ever re-entering their chaos. Forgiveness is not about minimizing the damage or pretending like it never happened. It's about acknowledging the pain, honoring the lesson, and choosing not to let that wound define you anymore. You forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve freedom. You deserve to be whole. Toxic people often leave behind deep scars, emotional, mental, even spiritual. Their words may echo in your mind. Their actions may haunt your memories. But forgiveness is your way of saying, you no longer control this part of me. It is not weakness. It is spiritual strength. Because to forgive someone who never apologized, who never changed, who may never even acknowledge the damage, they still live in denial, takes more courage than holding on to rage. Forgiveness takes power back from those who never deserved it. Toxic people thrive when they know they've hurt you. They feel validated when you're bitter, angry, and reactive. But the moment you forgive, their hold on you begins to fade. You no longer carry them in your thoughts. You no longer build walls out of fear or self-protection. You start walking lighter, thinking clearer, and living fuller. Forgiveness doesn't erase the experience, but it reclaims your story from being defined by pain. One of the most transformative moments in your healing journey is when you choose to forgive, even without an apology. That's when you know you've taken responsibility for your own soul. You are no longer waiting for someone else's remorse to decide when you can be happy. You no longer tie your healing to their admission of guilt. You realize they may never change, but you will. You'll grow stronger, you'll walk wiser, and you'll love deeper because you've emptied your heart of what once poisoned it. There is divine wisdom in forgiveness. It doesn't mean you ignore injustice. It doesn't mean you become passive. In fact, forgiveness often requires the clarity and strength to distance yourself completely, to say, I forgive you, but I will never allow you access to hurt me again. That is mature love for yourself and your future. And the deeper your wounds, the more sacred your forgiveness becomes. You begin to understand that forgiving someone is not about their transformation, it's about your liberation. True forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without reliving. It means you can think about the situation without feeling the sting of the pain. You can speak about it without the weight of resentment. It means the emotional charge has been removed and only the wisdom remains. That is when you know you've truly healed. And that is the power toxic people can never take from you. Many carry pain for years, waiting for a moment of justice, closure, or acknowledgement that never comes. But the moment you forgive, you become your own closure. You stop waiting for someone else to make it right. You make peace with the past so you can move into your future whole. Forgiveness is not forgetting what happened. It's remembering who you are now because of it. You are wiser. You are stronger. You are more grounded. And most of all, you are free. When you forgive, you break the cycle. You refuse to become what tried to hurt you. You choose light over darkness. You bless instead of curse. And though the world may not understand it, heaven honors it. Forgiveness aligns your heart with divine peace. It allows love to flow where bitterness once lived. It opens you to new relationships, new opportunities, and new levels of joy that toxic people were never capable of giving you. So forgive fully, not just with words, but with your heart. Let it go, not for them, but for you. Release the pain, the blame, the need to prove anything. You don't need to win. You need to be free. That's the smartest way to deal with toxic people, not through vengeance, but through victory. Not by stooping to their level, but by rising above it. Let forgiveness be your final word. Let healing be your loudest response. And let peace be your permanent home. Silence is not weakness. It is wisdom clothed in strength. When you are dealing with toxic people, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say nothing at all. Not because you are afraid to speak, but because you understand that not every battle is worth your breath. Silence is the refuge of the discerning. It protects your peace, shields your energy, and keeps you from engaging in cycles that only exist to drain and distract you. The more toxic the person, the more they crave a reaction. But when you choose silence, you deny them the one thing they thrive on: control over your emotions. Toxic people are skilled at putting you into arguments that serve no purpose other than to unsettle you. They provoke you with accusations, twist your words, and bait you with manipulation. And the moment you respond, they spin the narrative. They turn your defense into guilt, your explanation into weakness, your anger into proof that you are the problem. But silence breaks that cycle. It starves their need for drama and removes the oxygen from the fire they try to ignite. When you stop reacting, you stop feeding the dysfunction. Just choosing silence does not mean you're passive or indifferent. It means you're intentional. It means you've reached a level of awareness where you no longer feel obligated to explain your worth to those who devalue it. You no longer justify your boundaries to those who constantly cross them. You no longer waste your voice on people committed to misunderstanding you. Toxic people will always interpret your silence as arrogance or guilt, but that's only because they cannot manipulate what they cannot engage. Let them think what they will. Your peace is more valuable than their opinion. Silence also gives you time to observe, to assess, to discern what's really happening without the noise of conflict clouding your judgment. Toxic people often move in deception, and when you're constantly reacting, you miss the subtle patterns that reveal their true intentions. But when you are quiet, you see more clearly. You begin to notice their inconsistencies, their manipulation tactics, their emotional traps. Silence sharpens your perception and allows truth to rise above confusion. And most importantly, silence preserves your dignity. It keeps you from lowering yourself to the level of pettiness or emotional chaos. When you refuse to argue, when you choose not to retaliate, you show strength. You demonstrate that your emotions are governed by wisdom, not provocation. Toxic people want you to lose control so they can maintain power. But when you remain silent, composed, and rooted, you disarm them without saying a word. You become untouchable. Not because you're hard, but because you're healed. Sometimes the best closure is not a final conversation. Sometimes it's simply walking away in silence, with your head held high and your spirit intact. No dramatic exits, no lengthy explanations, just a quiet departure that says, I know my worth. You don't need to convince anyone of your truth. Your life, your peace, your growth, that speaks louder than any argument ever could. Let your silence be your strength and your actions your response. Silence is also a sacred space for healing. When you step away from the noise of toxic people, you create room for your soul to breathe. You begin to hear your own thoughts again. You reconnect with your intuition. You remember who you are outside of their chaos. In silence, you rediscover your voice. Not the one that shouts to be heard, but the one that whispers in confidence, you are free. And that voice will guide you into new places of clarity, purpose, and peace. Even spiritually, silence is where transformation begins. It's where you meet the divine, where your soul aligns with truth, and where wisdom grows. Toxic people live in noise. They fear stillness because stillness reveals their lack of depth. But when you cultivate silence, you become anchored. You become unshakable. You become someone who no longer reacts to the storm but rests in the eye of it. Let toxic people talk. Let them slander, twist, or try to provoke, but do not descend into their chaos. Your silence is not empty. It is full of discernment, strength, and grace. It says, I choose not to give you what you want. A reaction. I choose peace, and in that choice you win. Not by defeating them, but by rising above them. Not by shouting back, but by stepping back. Listen. Not every battle is a battlefield. Some are just tests to reveal your growth. The smartest way to deal with toxic people is to be so filled with peace, they can't find a place to plant their poison. Let God handle what you can't. You were never called to carry what breaks your spirit. This is your moment to choose. Continue feeding toxicity with your attention, or finally starve it with your silence. There is power in walking away when you walk toward peace. And I'll leave you with this. You don't need to defeat toxic people. You just need to stop giving them a seat at your table.